All right, now that we went over chapter 4 and demand, we're going to move on to chapter 5 and supply. Now, the reason we go over demand first is because demand is a little bit easier for people to pick up on. Because when you think about demand, you're thinking as a consumer, and you're usually put in that position most of the time. Anytime you go shopping, you're being a consumer. So it's a little bit easier to recognize. Supply, though, we're going to ask you to think as if you're a business owner, as if you produce something that people want to buy. So as a business owner, just think to yourself, what are some of the things that could cause the prices of your products to change? What would make things more expensive or less expensive? And what are some reasons you would want to keep more products, more of a certain product in your store, or less of a certain product in your store? So like I said, this is going to be very similar to demand, except all it is going to be the supply curve goes the opposite way. First major difference is you have to think like a business and not a consumer. So you have to think about making money instead of spending money. Now this will be a little bit of a stretch because we're not suppliers of major retail stores or anything, but you already are a supplier to an extent. You supply companies with your labor. So just think, the more people are going to pay you, the more willing you are to work. That's going to be kind of the groundwork for this chapter on supply. Okay? So the more people will pay you, the more money they'll give you, the more you're willing to work. So let's go over demand really quickly. Demand is the willingness and ability to purchase goods and services. Supply is the willingness and ability to produce goods and services. So this is how willing are you to supply your labor to somebody else? How willing are you to go to work? How willing are you to make something that somebody else is going to buy? So the law of demand and the law of supply, they're kind of similar, but this is the major difference here. In the law of demand, as price increases, the quantity demand decreases. As price decreases, the quantity demanded increases. This is an inverse relationship. An inverse relationship. When we move on to the law of supply, and this is what you're going to have to keep straight. The law of supply, as price increases, the quantity supplied also increases. As the price decreases, quantity supplied also decreases. Like I said, if you think of yourself as selling your labor, as supplying your labor to businesses, if they're willing to pay you more, if the price increases, you're willing to work more. The quantity supplied will increase. You're going to work a lot more if they're willing to pay you $50 an hour. Okay? You're willing to work a lot more. If they're going to pay you $5 an hour, you're going to work a lot less. You're going to want to work a lot less. And this is called a direct relationship. Because when one thing increases, when price increases, quantity supply increases. They both move in the same direction all the time. As opposed to an inverse relationship where they go in the opposite direction, where price increases and quantity demanded decreases. We've already gone over what a schedule and a chart are. So over here to the left, we have a supply schedule. If the price is $1, you're going to supply 1. If people are going to pay you more for a good, you're going to make more of that good. You're going to supply them with more of them. If they're going to pay you 4 $4, you're going to make 4 of them because you're going to want to make more money. The more money you can make, the more you're going to produce. So we go over here to the right and graph it. As price increases, quantity supply increases. Now you'll notice that opposed to a demand chart, that the supply curve, is moving from on a upward slant, starting at the lower left and going right. The demand curve goes the opposite direction, okay? Remember that the demand curve will go the opposite direction. So demand is right here. Supply curve is right here. What is quantity supplied? If you paid attention in chapter 4 and know what quantity demanded is, then you should be able to figure out quantity supplied. And this is the number of units, the actual number of units produced and offered for sale at a specific price. Do you think the supply curve could ever be completely vertical? And this is a little confusing because we haven't talked about the slope of the supply curve yet. In a little bit, in more advanced economics classes, we talk about how much the curve is sloped and kind of the shape of the curve. We're not going to get into that, but a curve can be completely vertical. This happens when you have only so many of a good. You only have so many of a good in the world. You can't make any more. It's just, there is what it is. And they can't produce any more. There's not going to be any more made. So like diamonds are a good example. Concert tickets, old cars, those are things that have a completely vertical supply curve. Now if you look here on the bottom right, you have the quantity supplied is always the same, no matter what price it is. Okay? So if somebody offers a really low price, you're going to produce the same amount of that product. If somebody offers a really high price, you're going to produce the same amount of that product. You're going to produce the same amount of that product, regardless of how much people offer to buy it for. Because it's impossible to produce any less than this, or any more than this. Again, very similar to the demand curve. When supply increases, the supply curve will shift to the right. When supply decreases, the supply curve will shift to the left. We're actually going to pause right there. We're going to come back in the next video and start talking about factors that actually cause a shift in the supply curve, and then we'll go over some basic math stuff and pertaining to running a business.